Okay, the session is starting. So we're on Bonaire 4 for the IC channel. There is a Gabi document open as well, which is named Other DX Unity Compiz. Here, where I'll be capturing elements from this session. So we have Jason Smith here from the DX team, who's going to explain the change we're doing, that is the switch we're making to Compiz. I guess we'll do a Q&A on the switch and how that impacts sort of the integration of Unity with the rest of the platform, knowing that we hope that the impact will actually be limited and will facilitate Unity's integration from that side forward. So, first, Jason, can you play us a bit the switch, what was there before, why we're switching?
So, I think the biggest question that a lot of people have is, why are we switching to Compiz? And the reasons are multifaceted and many. The most obvious is that Compiz is very performant, it's fast. It doesn't have much between it and the hardware, so.
I'm sorry, I was waiting my turn.
So, you know, we're hoping to get better frame rates out of Compiz. We were also beginning to have issues with Mutter. Its plugin system is not fully matured yet. And we're having problems getting, we were getting to the point where the changes or modifications to Mutter we needed were beginning to conflict with the changes and modifications Gnome Shell needed. Essentially, the plugin architecture wasn't flexible enough to accommodate both styles. And we were starting to have to patch it. So Mutter was becoming a problem, and we were also having performance problems there. So with the Compiz switch, it's important to note that the only thing that's changing is the front-end code, the views. We're not changing on the back ends, which are actually the majority of Unity code. It's being implemented as a plugin to Compiz, or more likely by the end of this, a series of plugins to Compiz, each implementing the different major features. So there will be a plugin that implements the UI, and a plugin that implements workspaces, and the special workspace modes, whatever we come up with. Or we'll just be using the Expo plugin, I don't know. And speaking of being able to use the Expo plugin, that is another thing. We can use existing Compiz plugins to do the things we want to do. So we don't have to implement a shiny Alt-Tab solution if we don't want to. We can
Definitely
instead,
not, because the existing Compiz with the switch at least for 0.8 is accessible. So.
what?
Well, preferably, like going by, I can say that the Compiz 0.9, but yeah, you're saying we don't have to implement an Alt-Tab switch if we don't want to. Preferably we shouldn't need to, or shouldn't. Preferably we should. I don't think we should, because if as long as the existing Alt-Tab switch in Compiz 0.9 is still accessible.
Yeah, so the Alt-Tab code wouldn't have changed between 0.8 and 0.9.
Which means the switcher is accessible.
So
we can benefit from that.
I don't know how to say this SSJ guy's name, so I'm just call him SSJ. So yeah, there's a hardware blacklist right now in Compiz. And if your hardware is blacklisted because it should be, because it doesn't work, that's one thing, and then we need to figure out why. And if it's blacklisted because it's just blacklisted and it actually works fine, then we need to fix the blacklist. Either way, file a bug. So I guess at this point, where do you want me to head with this?
Can I ask a question about?
Yeah, Rick.
I wanted to ask about like hardware and such. I know that like Compiz has a blacklist, I guess.
Yeah.
And this kind of thing. So do you think the switch to Compiz will bring us more or better hardware compatibility in terms of graphics chipset?
So when we start talking about hardware compatibility, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is try to do more extensive testing on what hardware actually works and what hardware actually doesn't work, and really get an understanding of where things stand in the open source world in terms of working hardware, working drivers, broken hardware, and broken drivers. Something we don't have that well yet.
For reference, so there was a review part of that we discussed yesterday during the QA session, and we'll have a session later this morning on hardware compatibility testing for Unity.
But that's not really what I'm asking. Is Compiz a better hardware compatibility than
It
Unity?
at least has the same hardware compatibility as Mutter. In other words, it uses the same GL extensions. It can actually be lighter.
Compiz is currently significantly better supported than Mutter, at least in my experience. There are far more open drivers that support Compiz well than open drivers that support Mutter well.
But the parts of the project
And that was
Compiz
going
that
to be
not
my
uses
question.
it?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. How much of Unity's current problems on open drivers are inherent to Unity, and how much are inherent to Mutter? Are we going to be significantly increasing the hardware problems in the Unity program, or are we just going to get a whole lot of hardware for free?
It's not going to increase the problems, but one thing that needs to be clear is that because the system is running Compiz well, doesn't mean it will run Unity well, because Unity has extra requirements. In particular, the system needs to support FBOs, frame buffer objects, and that's something that, like their old machines will not support well.
So that's something that we're going to have an easier time with, though, is degrading a little gracefully. And the only hard requirement we think we're going to have above Compiz is going to be the FBO support.
This is the main extension actually that sets the line between the machines that are usually relatively old and won't be able to run Unity, and a machine that will the more recent machines that will be able to run it. So for reference, this system, which is a bit broken now, but which is a 5-6-year-old machine, is running it well. That is as FBO support and as decent GPU capabilities.
And we do have running on a Dell Mini 9, and full FBO support there. Works very nice, very performant. It's even faster than the previous version of Unity.
Yeah. So in short, we'll probably get some. There's probably some.
There will be
some hardware that will work for free just by switching to Compiz.
Yes.
But we do have some, like FBOs is a fairly significant extra requirement over Compiz.
Yes, that is the significant extra requirement.
Do we expect the drivers to change during this cycle?
Yes.
I mean, if we find problems in the drivers, is there any chance that they be fixed in one cycle, or are we just stuck with what is out there now?
Well, the driver developers, and I think Chris can elaborate on this a little more, but driver developer time is not exactly, allocated by distributions.
No, but still, like, I don't know how fast the drivers move when they find bugs.
It depends on the type of bug, but drivers can move quite rapidly, and for many, and for most of the drivers, there's quite a lot of movement towards better GL support quite quickly now. So I think, if in early testing we find that something doesn't work, I think it's entirely possible that we could either upstream it or possibly fix it ourselves. I'd like to be able to do some actual bug fixing in the 3D stack for Unity this cycle, if we run into it.
Then don't sign up for work day.
Yeah, but I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be feasible time-wise. But I would really like to. I would like to make sure that 3D works enough for Unity on as many parts as we can.
I would like you to also.
Bill?
I know startup time of Unity is important for a lot of people, and do you guys have any feelings or guidelines as far as how this is going to compare to the Mutter publishing?
So I think that performance testing has been done on regular Compiz startup, and we've generally come to the conclusion that it's slow to load plugins. So we have contracted Sam Spillas, who is a Compiz developer.
Morning, Sam.
And I think having trouble getting on the audio stream. And one of the things he's going to be looking at is improving the startup time and doing things like enabling plugins to be compiled into the core binary rather than having them have to go through the whole DL open process and that very slow plugin loading.
Yeah, but so a while ago, there was protobuf support added to Compiz, but it was not complete. Would it be a good idea to actually try to complete this project?
Yes. So there seem to be two major points in loading Compiz in terms of slowdowns. That's loading the XML and then loading, actually performing the DL open. That seems to take a significant chunk of time. And if we can eliminate one or both of those, our startup performance should be much better.
Oh, you mean protobuf to replace XML?
Yeah, so there was a project to basically make Compiz use a less nasty configuration, or what do you guys call it?
Configuration management.
A configuration management file format.
Yeah, we've been through like 8 different ways of configuring Compiz by now.
Yeah, and all of them were we're about as slow as the last.
Yeah, or slower.
Yeah, we need to get one that's actually, faster.
Also, yeah, that's what you were doing wrong.
Yeah, you went the wrong way. Oh, is Sam now on the thing? Okay.
Okay. MCC. Okay.
Yeah.
You may want to look at something like decom.
Awesome.
Hmm?
What?
Decom for configuration system sets weekend cuts.
So, yeah, we can look into deconf. The thing is, we don't want to start getting into major changes to Compiz in a single cycle. We want to get those changes that will get us the most effect the quickest.
Yeah, so what should be mentioned at this point is that we actually spoke a lot about performance yesterday in testing, and actually figuring out, not just doing random things to make it faster, but figuring out what is actually slow before we fix it. Among those were actually measuring how long time does it actually take to load plugins. Because if it turns out that the configuration part isn't the slow part, it's pretty silly to spend a lot of time fixing it.
Yeah.
On that, maybe we can add, so again, this is something we started discussing yesterday, but that performance will be tracked at 2 levels. So first, at the blue chart level, as is currently the case, was the UNE image. So we'll track boot performance from this rather goal-scoring approach, but to spot the main performance issues. And then we also have internal performance counters that will be collected on as many systems as possible to also spot the actual issues within Compiz and the Unity startup procedure. So again, we think that DL open is the main performance issue at this point, but by collecting more data, we'll be able to also figure out whether we need to do something more.
So there is a not enabled performance patch in Compiz that can be used to get basic timing data. I'm not sure if it still applies, but a year ago we did some work to actually profile what part of the loading is slow and fast.
Okay.
It needs to be a way we can just apply that.
It doesn't apply in as the new version. Maybe Sam has a comment on that, whether it's something that was in the plans or.
Yeah, so the INI method probably has, it's probably fairly quick. So this is why I went right to DL open rather than the protobuf or whatever it is.
Yeah, sorry Sam. So the question was the performance counters that are in Compiz apparently
don't work with the 0.9 version anymore. Is that something that is in the priority list, or knowing that we do have other performance counters, so we're not that dependent on them, but if they're there, it may be useful to use them as well.
It would be good to try to teach upstream to be conscious about startup performance.
I think
Well, upstream is listening.
we really need to repeat this discussion today. I mean, we already
Well,
spent quite a bit of time.
There's more
talking.
upstream than just Christian and Sam.
Is that the FPS counter?
No. We're talking startup performance, Sam. So looking at kind of checkpoints throughout the startup procedure and see, what's taking a while, what's not, where are we losing our time? Why are we taking 5 seconds to start up?
Okay, Devil makes me ask you, if Unity comes with Compiz enabled, what provisions are being made for the NVIDIA card users who don't have 3D until they install the hardware driver?
So they would, I can't speak fully to the experience we'd give to them because that's not entirely our decision, I don't know. But I imagine what they would get is a 2D fallback initially. Jockey comes up, says, hey, you can install the NVIDIA driver. They install it, Jockey asks them to restart, and when they come back in, poof, Unity.
The details of that plan actually are in the, and we're discussing the 2D experience fallback session, which was Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so we covered all the different cases of either migrate or scrap a new installation, and with the different driver types and the kind of transitions the user needs to go through in order to get full Unity experience. So actually, I don't have all the details in mind, but
Yeah, the
Gabi session.
that session was mostly focused on how to do it, not actually user experience as far as it's because the switch right now is not that big between GNOME and switching the Compiz. It's not visually that different. But the moment you introduce Unity into the picture, it's going to be significantly different. So
There
I
will
suppose
have
there
to
needs to be, but it does fall under the same category as any other 2D fallback. And this is the real reason for this is because of the NVIDIA drivers, and you can't do it until they've installed and all that. So.
Yeah, so again, this is just not something that we have, we're the ones making the decision for.
Yeah.
Does the new Nouveau driver work?
So the Nouveau driver is, it has too many limitations right now.
It's not going to be used in Natty.
Yeah, it's not going to be used in Natty.
It's certainly not going to be default.
Right.
It does run Compiz pretty acceptably.
Except it has major problems in terms of power management.
Oh, yeah. If we get a 2.6.38 kernel, I'm not sure what kernel we're going to be getting, but if we get a 2.6.38 kernel, it's quite likely that the power management support for Nouveau will land in that.
But I thought that from the outcome of the explained session
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
well,
That said, we're out of the box, we're not going to have Nouveau 3D, and we're not going to support Nouveau 3D. It's going to be in Universe, and we're going to say, if you install this, it'll probably work for you. If it doesn't, it's like, if it doesn't, I told you so. So it's entirely, but I would expect that Nouveau would run Unity, but I wouldn't invest a huge amount of effort in either testing that or making it work.
And it's not worth it for most users if the power management isn't there.
Yeah, it's like
You'll
Sam
cook your
says,
system.
you're probably going to need like a fire extinguisher next to your PC.
Okay, so we're about halfway through the session. So we've answered the first series of questions and covered questions mostly on performance. That is startup performance or performance in general for Unity. We've also discussed hardware compatibility. Actually, there's a session coming up on that. So I want to see other aspects of the switch, like in particular integration with the platform. So we've also started discussing that with the Nouveau driver. But what should we see in terms of, packaging, about configuration, about migration, about things like that. That is how the platform is going to integrate this new Compiz plus Unity system.
I don't see a lot of difference between upgrade and stuff for that, because people should already have Compiz, and if they don't have the Ubuntu desktop data package, we are looking at each upgrade to propose to install it, so they will get Compiz with Unity as a plugin.
Yeah.
So I don't see a very major issue for that. The only one is for UNE to Unity, UNE to the new UNE version.
There is a worry about making sure that the default configuration for the new version of Compiz. So like you're going to have people coming through who want Unity, but who have already configured Compiz in Maverick.
But for that, upstream, I guess, has changed the directory path.
All right.
And so screwed up everything.
So they're not going to transfer their settings anywho.
Sam, I think there is a request from the audience that
You change the path for the INI backend.
It went from .compiz to .compiz-1.
And so what people has already, configured is just remove for Compiz 0.9.
Mirko, you can pay attention.
I have a question, however, so to platform. Because we're considering combining in a couple of plugins, in Compiz. Right. So it means it's not like the normal Compiz, or would you consider that the normal Compiz, or?
I think if it depends on how it depends on how it's done. I think this is something we should be able to do within the realms of normal Compiz, but I think it has to be, in my opinion, it has to be done in a way where you would normally not compile it as one, but then sort of release, you would build and bundle it into one. Because in reality, it's just a shared object file, so it's not really that magic. But it's much easier to work on files while you're developing. For example, then you can actually reload a plugin while you're running.
Does that mean that there would be a Compiz version and then a Compiz dash static or
debug?
It really depends on which plugins you want to statically limit. If it's plugins that are really, widely used with Compiz,
well,
I guess we can keep one because everyone will have a game.
I mean, I think
it depends how well we can deal with having a plugin statically linked and not enabling it.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that.
Right now, have the two notions in Compiz.
Right now, there's a one-to-one relationship. If you have plugin, you load it, and if you load it, it's a plugin. But there's not really an reason it couldn't be a difference between verifying the plugin and what the name of it is and so forth. That's not. I mean, that's you just have to
so it's not
differentiate.
saying we can do with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right. So yeah, but that functionality isn't actually in.
No, but it's not. It makes sense.
Yeah. It's not unreasonable to do.
No.
So then in this case, we do have a good solution, and that will still. We would still have it like a normal Compiz, not like custom made.
No, it's going to be pretty much the same.
It's better because, because if we have two binary, we have to either do some magic in CCSA or in the display.
Right. I know this is not great, so that's why I asked the question.
I don't think you actually need two packages, but I mean, you just need one.
Yeah.
Because it's just really a problem when you're working on it.
Yeah. It's only a problem in the developer land, which we developers. I mean, it'll be a compile time option. And
Yeah, the
it'll off
only
by default.
issue I have.
is not for users.
Right.
The only issue I sort of have with that is I prefer if the developer sees the same stuff version that the users, but in this case the difference is not really anything noticeable.
It shouldn't be a big problem, and if it is, we'll work out protocols for dealing with it.
Yeah, yes.
Nice. Vish has an interesting remark. I think we should turn off the plugin or put some maybe should probably hide the.
No, we want to warn that.
Like, no, don't. So the branch.
Well, so,
If you do that, you just, well, that's the same thing that happened today. If you encompass, if you disable the wrong things happen. If we sell a chainsaw, you
So
can't
the
help
option
it
is
if
not
somebody
going to be
cuts off the leg. Hmm?
So the plugin is not going to be exposed as an option.
Well, it depends on what you mean this exposed as an option. Right now, it's exposed way too much as an option. If you want to, you can set your resolution in Compiz to be 1 by 1 pixel. And if you do that, bad stuff is going to happen. But
right.
it's not easily accessible. It's not like going to be right-click on your desktop and disable the Unity plugin. So you have to sort of try to do it.
And CSM isn't really meant to be exposed by default anyway, so.
But it actually brings us into a nice, interesting
CSM.
area because.
And we can apparently hide plugins from CCS.
Yeah, but we don't want to get into that yet.
no, you don't want to get into that
Because
with,
if some people just want to use Compiz and not Unity,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right,
there
but
will be.
There's certainly.
There's a point here.
There's an argument for people who have Compiz support but no FBO support, that this should be possible.
Yeah, and CCSM is power use if you want to use that, and it's not really meant for everyday computer use.
So what do people do if they log in and like for, like in Natty, people will be able to log in for a non-Unity session, right? Like a classic GNOME session.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's totally reasonable that they want to use Compiz with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
so this
So how's
is-
that going to be supported? Like,
So again, the talk of making it impossible to disable Unity is just, that's not going to happen. I mean, the Unity plugin will be able to be disabled.
will be, like, so if you log in
Technically,
a classic desktop session, it's automatically gets disabled for the user. They can go to appearance, turn on the fancy effects. And so, like, can you make a note of that, Seb? Make sure that we make it so like we don't change the experience for people who want to use a classic session and still use Compiz. We should test that like every day and make sure that we don't backslide on that.
Are you taking it?
Yeah. Right, this is what I also wanted to add. So the same way we want to manage the 2D experience fallback, that is making sure the user has a nice transition, things don't go as planned. I think we should also document the need for warning the user if there's enabling plugins that may be compatible with the Unity experience, like, I don't know, well, a ridiculous example would be the Windows in Flame. If it's not necessarily, incompatible, but this is not, I guess there may be plugins in Compiz that would not work with would make the user experience bad or unusable.
The Unity plugin would be made to conflict with plugins that it is known not to work with.
We have conflict.
Right, exactly.
Or known to work terribly with, like Fire. I think that Unity and Fire.
So
just
everything
So,
essentially conflicts with fire.
The dependency mechanism is fine because once you enable the Unity plugin, then you can make sure that everything that comes or that is required by it is enabled as well, and all the plugins are disabled.
So you already have this because they have if you remember, we used to have this thing, and I think nobody ever heard about it. We have this cube plugin.
Yeah.
That plugin that draw the cube and the plugin that actually rotate it was two different plugins. Obviously, you don't actually load the plugin to rotate a cube unless you have a cube. So you already had to deal with dependencies back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have multiple switchers. Those switchers are, I suppose, conflicting concept.
So we have conflicts and switchers, and the wall and cube conflict.
You can actually use multiple switchers. You're just combining into the same thing, and it doesn't make any sense. But conceptually, it doesn't conflict.
Right,
Just sort of practically.
But logically and practically they should.
Yeah. But we have conflicts. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. Just like I know it's a bit meta, but just responding to something David says. I mean, I just think we should keep in mind it's totally valid for a user to prefer the classic experience. But we shouldn't always refer to it as a callback. It may not be, a fallback. They may not be using it Unity might work fine.
No, so
I'm not calling that the fallback. What I'm calling the fallback is the transition between Unity and the classical 3D.
So there's actually multiple issues there. Because the fallback we're usually talking about is when you don't have 3D support.
Right.
And what you're saying is you do have it, you just don't want Unity.
Right, that's the point I'm trying to
Yeah.
make, is
And-
it's a totally valid scenario,
And
that the
we-
user can run Unity and chooses not to. So it's just, it's
We will cover
linguistic.
that.
But it's,
Majority agreed on having another station on JDN so that they can launch the classic.
I know, but I'm just responding to like the way you guys are describing it. I'm worried about it being attitudinal, that like users are stuck with the classic desktop experience because they can't run Unity, but we can't be thinking about it that way. We have to think of the classic experience as being just
First class citizens.
exactly. So that, okay. Someone?
Yeah, I don't think we're applying anything else, but okay.
Okay, just making.
Stand corrected.
See, it's a fallback. It's not a fallback.
Okay.
Fallback is when you can't run Compiz at all,
Right.
like we have today.
Yeah, just don't call it the fallback, just call
I
it
mean,
the
the
experience.
fallback in case you try to do
The
something
2D
but you couldn't.
Right, and you're
This-
stuck with it.
It's
which-
an active choice, it's not a
I
fallback.
mean, it's important just because when people think about the project and they're making choices about where to invest and how things.
Right.
Okay.
I think you will find that there are even Compiz developers who work on this who don't prefer Unity. So from the Compiz side, this isn't really something you need to worry about. But
And you have
so
other
it's just
issues.
making sure that this follows through, that
Yeah,
cater to both needs.
right,
And I think
so,
it's not really a big deal.
so yeah,
challenge.
we need to worry about Compiz community and we need to be conscious of what you guys want. So I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
I think the real sort of reason that we don't hear that 2D part doesn't get now, the non-Unity part doesn't get that much focus is because, well, most of us feel that we more or less already nailed that.
Agreed. And
So,
I was
Yeah.
just responding to the tone, so.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any other elements we should consider in terms of platform integration?
Says
Discuss
12.
a little bit drivers, about the packaging, sort of, the configuration, we discussed that as well.
Yesterday we discussed about backporting to Maverick for users to experience that.
Yeah.
So maybe making, as we did in Nicid with the PPA.
Okay, yeah, so maybe we can talk now a bit more about the plan and the steps.
Just one more question regarding hardware. Do you have any plan to start working with the GLES support in Compiz? Because Mother currently supports it at some point.
Mutter does
And it's
not
kind of a
currently
regression,
support
Like
GLES.
changing to, sorry?
You want me to go into this?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, just to see if it's on your plans to start.
Yes.
work.
it's not on our, necessarily on our roadmap to begin like doing a port, but it's on our roadmap to not make the situation worse.
Right. Yeah. That is, we understand that GLES support is interesting for other platforms. This is not our primary focus, but we also know that it's a bridge
I think
to convert some of the GL calls we're doing to be compatible with the GLES profile.
yeah,
We can't yet, we've not fully investigated the amount of effort that would represent, but, we're ready to make the best effort to in this direction.
Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here.
yeah.
Okay, quick answers. Isn't 10? No.
Hmm?
We
What
will.
happens if they turn on Unity plugin in KDE?
Yeah, so in KDE, the Unity plugin probably just won't work the way we expect it to. Which means that you'll get the same KDE Compiz experience you've been getting forever. Right.
Okay. Right, so some elements about the plan, the steps. Before we get into the actual Unity development plan, when we can start having the first version of Unity running on Compiz and so on, what about Compiz, the Compiz community's own plan? Because I know you guys have made a stable release and you have a few other release plans.
Yeah, it depends, actually it depends largely on you guys too. We can't do this on our own because you're probably going to be the biggest outside, the biggest contributor. You're already contacting Sam, but our main priority, well, okay, let me be more honest, my main priority is to ensure that the stability is maintained and make sure that we are able to do that the long-term goal is not sacrificed for the 6-month release schedule. But I don't see any conceptual conflict there. I just have to be, I know we share the same goals there, so I don't see any big problem, but I just want to make sure we sort of are able to avoid the whole, one thing we want to avoid absolutely is the big code dumps. Because we've had that in the past and it has horrible effects. And you know that, and we know that, so no problem. So that's off the list. We want to make sure that we don't do, I want to make sure that throughout the cycle we should have several development releases, gradual introduction of features that you need for Unity. So we don't get like one release with everything, because that's very difficult to work with. For everyone. So
the main things with
I just wanted to clear a schedule essentially. That's it.
yeah.
So I think when we talk about Compiz upstream, the way we think of we as the Unity developers think of Compiz upstream is that the only thing that we really desire from upstream is stability and bug fixes. And if you hit a performance improvement or a nice new feature along the way, fine.
Yeah.
But if not, we love stability and bug fixes.
Yes. And as for upstream, I'm upstream on, and the thing I see about the Unity development is I want to make sure that the things you do that are usable to not just the whole Unity package is actually available to the rest of Compiz. And I'm willing to, if you tell me that, okay, we need to do everything in one plugin because we can't communicate state, then I will accept that and I will start see if we can't solve the problem and why can't we talk between, what do we need to communicate, how do we do that? And that's sort of where I see upstream coming to the picture because that's our job, figuring out the architecture of plugins. Then you're going to write plugins. I'm not going to tell you don't write it because in 6 months you're going to have a better architecture, because that's stupid.
Right. So I think that's a lot of what things are going to end up doing is for now we're going to end up being more monolithic than we want because of the integration required. It's not
and
like
the speed that you need to do. And I think it's, I'm good with that as long as you, while you're designing it, you have in mind that we want to split this up eventually.
And we have to do that anyway because we want a fully testable situation.
So it's in everybody's best interest.
We should be in a good position later on when Compiz has better state communication.
Yeah. Yes.
Schedule-wise?
Schedule-wise, we need to sit down and list up all the things we have and just sort them in the box.
So, but just for reference, so 0.9 was released 2 weeks ago?
No, 0.9.0 was released a few months ago. 0.9. That was released on Sunday.
Right.
And there is an incoming 0.9.2.1 apparently. Because Sam told me to wait for 0.9.2.1.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not sure what that's about, so I'll leave that to Sam. I assume that might have just been wait a bit, but...
Yeah. So the GLES thing is coming up again on IRC, so I'll just reiterate. GLES, when 0.9 was ported, they updated the GL to be GL 2.1-ish. Which means that the GLES port isn't as bad as it would have been with 0.8. A lot of plugins, though, will not be easy ports. However, the plugins that are hard ports are like the Blur plugin, the Fire plugin, the ones that use crazy GL effects. The texture from Pixmap stuff, again, is going to be worked there. So,
what is the next major release? 0.9.4.
Suppose, but this is right now it's been sort of Sam has been running the show, and so it's been based on what he's been capable of doing. And obviously now the picture has capable and interested in what he's done. So now that we're getting so much more attention, again, we need to sit down and we don't really have anything of big on any other big items except making it develop. So our schedule is your schedule more or less. But I would imagine that based on how quick you will get started, I want to get a release with glib first.
Yeah, so we want to start getting glib out there into Compiz core.
Yeah, and that should happen. I know you already have software, so
and
better with just merging it and doing a release before your field is finished, because it's development release and you need to get it out there.
Yeah.
And we need to sort of focus on just reaching these milestones, getting it out there, and after glib, I want to get some sort of functional Unity release with Unity. It doesn't actually have to be complete; it just needs to be something that we can like.
Yeah, somehow usable. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's making it a part of everything.
Here it goes.
Yeah.
No.
Well, yeah, no.
That's
too much.
So
Because
yeah,
this is
again,
not the main target.
Yeah, so GLS, to sort of that. We're not going to do that for now. So we will probably do that at some point if it's reasonable, but it's not going to be done for now. We have designed Compiz now with pluggable, the OpenGL is pluggable, we can change that, but I mean, this is not priority now. Priority is getting stable release of what we have. We don't need to redo OpenGL right now.
yeah.
From
So Sam, most of those issues you're talking about in there are actually out of core now. That's what I'm saying. Is that when One Stone rewrote that part of core, he actually updated a lot of that stuff. It's not all gone, but a lot more is gone than you think.
Yeah, I know.
And that's just core though. The plugins still use it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have any OpenGL in core.
Well, I'm talking about the OpenGL plugin. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's and yes, I know it's very little in that, but this is we shouldn't really be focusing on that.
I'm sorry. Sam, you were talking about
I know.
that, and I wanted to address it.
So we have 10 minutes left. So in about a month, for example, can we have a version of Compiz with the main loop and some of the other bits and pieces?
So the main question, and this is for both Sam and Christian, is: are you guys willing to take on the glib branch as something that, like, we'll still help you maintain it, of course, but like, once you take it into core, it's then part of Compiz.
Yeah, and like I already said to you, yes, but I just need to see the code first. But I don't see any conceptual reason why not, because, well, if we need it, we need it.
Okay.
And it sounds like we do.
Yeah, so Sam turns out there's no bugs. As far as we can tell, there don't seem to be any additional
Well, if there's no bugs,
but
we haven't written any code.
Yeah.
So on that,
that's the point of coding, right?
glib main loop integration, so it's a change. It's a change in the main loop. We understand that there can be issues here.
Yeah, but
if every idea or suggestion you have to actually armor the same to trying to iron out the bugs as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, and this is why I want to just get it out there. Just move it, because right now, Compiz 09 doesn't really have a lot of features that people, there's not really much reason to go from 08 to 09 right now for normal users. So you haven't added a lot of features. And that puts us in a situation where adding glib is a non-issue, because we don't jeopardize anything really.
But stability bug fixing is a feature. I mean,
Yes, but compared to 08, 08 is still more stable than 09. So, and so stability-wise, it's still better, but the architecture of 09 is much more flexible.
So we can be like in 1 month with a version of Compiz that would run.
Every Tuesday, because in 1 month will be approximately alpha 1, so
Yes, this is alpha
there is
1.
a tweet, there is a tweet, so I will prefer
So
that
why don't
just before, so that you can work on
Yeah.
positioning,
I
for example.
mean,
So when is Alpha 1?
Alpha 1 is the 2 of December, so
That's
as
no
usual,
problem.
we have the soft freeze a little bit before.
So when's the soft freeze?
so our original,
which means
It's not really a week before.
so in our original
You can
plan,
plan a week before.
in our original,
27th.
End of this.
25.
So it'd be nice for us to get it out there before then. But
Yeah.
what were you saying?
so what else? But say that in our original plan, long before beginning like Unity, when we merged Compiz++, our original plan was actually doing developer releases with just a few weeks of intervals, and I think that's not unreasonable, because then we can have small but important features in each of them. So if you're saying December we have, that's, yes, absolutely not a problem.
Okay, then let's
Because-
target it to make it for Alpha 1.
Yeah.
Is there any plan to get settings migration by then?
Settings, migrations?
Like from OI to, because like for guides for distribution, it's important to
I
get
think
that.
that's definitely doable. I think that's an arrow, just great thing more or less.
So this is something that Sam you could work on, typically the same migration.
Yeah, settings migrations is just like a map.
Sam, settings migration, so making sure that when people upgrade from 0.8 to 0.9, their settings don't get wiped.
Yeah, the only issue I see
For
there is...
Unity, because you have to enable the Unity plugins and to disable completing ones.
Yeah,
So
but
then
another rule is...
Well, but maybe that we can deal with in post alpha 1. That is the
Yeah,
post
post
alpha
alpha
1
one,
we
sure.
should do.
Yeah.
But we should just agree on what we are doing, so I guess it's enabling the Unity plugins and disabling every conflicting plugins.
Yeah.
But still keep
Sam,
maybe
so-
the old
Yeah.
configuration, if you choose the GNOME classic desktop experience.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so just to summarize this, Sam, the question is migrating, when you're upgrading, you want to retain the configuration you have. But I suppose the reality is, if you change the configuration, you want to maintain it. But if you use the default, you probably want to get Unity. If you
Even
didn't, I
if
mean,
we don't have the default, I guess.
At alpha 1, no, I don't think.
no, maybe not for. I'm actually talking about sort of in
So
general.
for release, we'll
Oh,
have to
for-
come up with a different
yeah.
strategy. There will be
This is-
something there.
Yeah, this is a configuration aspect that
Yeah.
I trust the platform to.
Yeah, but we have to work
But,
so that we can have the two, with the two sessions and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Sam, that's
Exactly
something we can
what
talk
I'm-
about later.
Yes, I think we can talk about later.
Okay, so we're reaching the end of the session. So we've discussed the whys and whys of the switch to Compiz. We've reviewed integration points between Compiz, Unity, and the Ubuntu platform. We have some elements for the plan, the development plan, both for the community and Unity, was the first target for clearly identified, alpha 1, 0.94 plus the first version of the new Unity plugin. Anything else?
So I think at this point we could probably just take some general questions.
Yeah, and again, a heads up, there is another session on hardware compatibility later this morning called
I guess that
hardware compatibility testing for Unity.
one question I've actually had asked from the community, due to the switch comments, etc., is there any chance you may go back to market in the future?
Not without something really, really compelling in terms of performance.
I thought as much, yeah.
Well, it's never know, but
Like I said, we can't say for sure, but
Yeah.
my bet is no.
So in my world, it should be reasonable to change to back matter at some point, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. It needs to happen, something needs to happen on both sides of the farm, both sides of this. Well, I don't want to call it argument, but
Thanks, SSJ.
yeah, I think you should set like a really early date and make sure it hits every website ever.
Right.
No pressure.
Anything else? We've still got 3
Yeah,
minutes.
just want to say that we're excited to be working with the Compiz community this cycle. We appreciate, working with you.
We appreciate the love, so that goes both ways.
We want the glib branch.
Yeah, and I think
It's not on 2 December, it's at least a week before 2 December.
Yeah.
2 December is the Alpha 1.
The 30s.
35.
Can't you just stamp it right onto that?
actually, so how far along is the glib bash?
So
Is there any
it's-
sort of big, don't do this, and because then it's gonna.
Yeah, don't enable the glib plugin.
Right.
That's the big don't do.
I bet so.
Yeah, but nobody really does that anymore.
Right, but what I'm saying is it's
Yeah.
fundamentally incompatible.
Yeah, but there isn't like, okay, if you do this sort of thing, it's gonna crash shortly and delete everything.
I haven't run into any major.
So is there any reason you can't just merge
I've been
it
running
right?
it stably for a week without a
Yeah,
crash.
so let's just merge it like now, more or less, and then work on it and get it out there.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
No other questions?
Yes.
Thank you for participating to this session. You can, of course, come and ask more questions to Jason or the rest of the team during this week. Coming up next on Unity in Bonaire 3, Unity Places API, where we'll go more into the details of how contributors can develop new places. There have been discussion about the people's place. For those interested, and in particular, Sony, Jason, and Didrox will give you some pointers to documentation and code samples for the adventurous developers who want to try Unity places. Also, a very interesting session on command queue improvement. So, yeah, I think
Unity.